Pay attention to the elderly woman sitting at the table. This is security camera footage from a quiet beachfront condo in Ponce Inlet, Florida. January 19th, 2022, 7:34 in the morning. Her name is Margaret Darlene Hensley. Everyone calls her Darlene. She's 89 years old, short white hair, gentle features. She's looking outside the window, staring at the ocean view she loved so much she moved here just to see it every day. Now pay attention as a young woman enters the frame from the side. That's Mikayla Yusko, 22 years old, Darlene's caregiver for the past 4 months. She moves confidently through the home. Familiar, trusted. She approaches Darlene, leans in, says something quietly. You can't hear the words. Then she pats Darlene on the shoulder. A reassuring gesture, the kind caregivers do every day. Darlene looks up and smiles softly at her. Mikayla returns a small smile. Nothing appears wrong in this footage. Just a caregiver checking on an elderly woman. A routine morning visit. What you're watching are the final moments of Darlene Hensley's life. Within the next 24 hours, she will be dead. Not from illness, not from an accident, but at the hands of someone she trusted enough to let inside her home. What happened next would shatter a family, shake the quiet beach community of Ponce Inlet, Florida, and destroy the meaning of trust itself. Within minutes of this footage, Darlene will be shot twice in her own home. A woman who spent her life spreading faith will be murdered by someone who twisted that same faith into a weapon.
I don't feel worthy of forgiveness. I just pray that God forgives me and that He'll give me the strength one day to forgive myself.
So the question isn't how an elderly woman was murdered in her home. The question is, how did faith become a weapon? Margaret Darlene Hensley had beautiful blue eyes that sparkled when she talked. That's what her daughters remember most. She was 89 years old in January 2022, but sharp as ever, active, independent, still emailing friends from around the world, people she'd met decades ago on her missionary journeys. Darlene was originally from Michigan, a devoted Detroit Tigers fan, but her life was defined by something bigger than geography, her faith, her desire to help others. She spent decades as a teacher and missionary, traveling to communities that needed hope, teaching children to read, sharing the Bible, making everyone feel seen and valued. She kept detailed lists of everyone she met, names, addresses, birthdays. She never lost contact with anyone she cared about. She'd strike up friendships during her travels and still be emailing these people years later, still checking in, still caring. In recent years, she moved to Ponce Inlet, a small, quiet beach town in Volusia County. She wanted to be close to family, and she wanted that ocean view. Her condo at Links Village became her sanctuary. She could watch the sunrise every morning, feel the sea breeze, read in peace. I get to look at the ocean every day, she told her daughters. I love my view. As Darlene got older, her family thought it would be good to have someone check on her regularly, help with groceries, medication, small tasks. That's when they hired Mikayla Yusko. Mikayla was 22. She visited twice a day, morning and evening. She seemed sweet, helpful, caring. Darlene and Mikayla connected over their Christian faith. They prayed together, discussed scripture, talked about God's love and purpose. But what Darlene's family didn't know was that Mikayla was stealing from her small amounts of money, cash for drugs. And what nobody could have predicted was that Mikayla's faith, the very thing she shared with Darlene, was about to become something dark and deadly. Mikayla was married to Titan Jen. He was 24. Like Mikayla, he had no serious criminal history, nothing that suggested violence. But both were using drugs regularly, marijuana and other substances. Their behavior had become erratic. Titan's family noticed. His father would later tell police that Mikayla had been talking obsessively about religious revelations, the end times, the devil walking among us. She told them she was God, the father said, and that everyone else is the devil. On the night of January 18th, 2022, Mikayla and Titan were at home, getting high. And that's when Mikayla said something that changed everything. Darlene is the devil, she told Titan. God is telling me we have to stop her. Titan, high and suggestible, looked at his wife, the woman he trusted, the woman who spoke with such conviction about God's will, and he believed her. They made a plan. Early the next morning, they would go to Darlene's condo, and they would kill her. Early morning, January 19th, 2022, Mikayla and Titan drove to Links Village condominiums in Ponce Inlet. It was still dark. Most residents were asleep. Mikayla had a key. She'd been coming here twice a day for 4 months. She knew every detail of Darlene's routine. But this time was different. This time, Titan was with her, and he had a gun tucked into his waistband. They walked to Darlene's door. Mikayla unlocked it quietly. They stepped inside. Darlene was awake, maybe reading her Bible, maybe having coffee by the window, watching the ocean she loved. She looked up and saw them. "Mikayla," she probably said, smiling. "Good morning. I wasn't expecting you so early." Then she saw Titan, the expression on their faces. Something was wrong. "Is everything okay?" For a moment, just a moment, Titan hesitated. This was an 89-year-old woman, a grandmother, someone who'd done nothing but show kindness to his wife. But Mikayla's voice echoed in his head. "She's the devil. God wants this. We have to do it." He raised a gun. 2 shots. Both struck Darlene Hensley in her own home. The woman who spent 89 years spreading love and faith collapsed. There was nothing she could do, no way to defend herself, no time to understand why the young woman she trusted had brought death to her door. Within minutes, she was gone. Mikayla and Titan stood there, staring at what they'd done. Then they left, got back in their car, drove away from Ponce Inlet. They headed north to Oak Hill, Florida, about 30 miles away, to Tatan's grandfather's house. And that's where everything started to unravel. When Mikayla and Titan arrived at the grandfather's house, he knew immediately something was wrong. They were agitated, paranoid, speaking in fragments. Then Mikayla started talking. She told him what they'd done, that they just shot and killed an elderly woman in Ponce Inlet, that it was God's will, that Darlene was the devil. The grandfather was horrified. He didn't know what to do, but he knew he had to call the police. At approximately 8:30 in the morning, Tatan's grandfather called 911. The call was bizarre, rambling, but the dispatcher pieced together what he was saying. "My granddaughter came here," the man said, voice shaking. "She told me she killed someone. She said she was God, that everyone else is a devil." "Sir, slow down. Who was killed?" "An old woman in Ponce Inlet at the condominiums. They shot her." "Who shot her?" "My grandson and his wife. They're here right now." The dispatcher immediately alerted Ponce Inlet Police and the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. Officers were dispatched to both locations, some to Lynx Village, others to Oak Hill. At the condominiums, Ponce Inlet Police Chief Jeff Glazer and his officers arrived to find a scene the small beach town hadn't witnessed in over 25 years. Inside Darlene's condo, they found her body. She'd been shot twice. No signs of struggle. No forced entry. Whoever did this, she let them in. She trusted them. Chief Glazer contacted the family. Darlene's daughters. Her grandchildren. They were devastated. Confused. Who would do this? Meanwhile, in Oak Hill, Volusia County Sheriff's deputies arrived at the grandfather's house. Mikayla Yusko and Titan Jin were still there, not hiding, not running, just sitting. When deputies asked if they'd been to Ponce Inlet that morning, Mikayla nodded. "Did you shoot someone there?" Mikayla looked at them with an eerily calm expression. "She was the devil," she said. "God told me." Both were arrested immediately, charged with first-degree murder and armed burglary. As they were led to separate patrol cars, Mikayla showed no emotion, no remorse, no understanding. Titan looked shell-shocked, like he was waking from a nightmare. But Darlene Hensley was still dead. News spread through Ponce Inlet like a shockwave. Darlene's family flew in from across the country. They couldn't comprehend what had happened. "She was a wonderful woman," one daughter said. "She gave her life to caring for others. This doesn't make sense." Police Chief Jeff Glazer held a press conference. The victim, 89-year-old Margaret Darlene Hensley, was shot inside her condo early this morning. Her caregiver, 22-year-old Mikayla Yusko, and Yusko's husband, 24-year-old Titan Jin, have been arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Reporters asked the obvious question: why? What was the motive? Chief Glazer shook his head. The suspects went to a relative's home after murder and admitted what they'd done. That's how we responded so quickly. In interrogations, the disturbing truth emerged. Mikayla admitted to planning the murder. She admitted convincing Titan to pull the trigger. She admitted stealing money from Darlene over the months to buy drugs. But she showed no remorse. Darlene was the devil. God spoke to me. I was following his will. Detectives pressed. Had she been using drugs? Yes. Marijuana the night before. Other substances over time. But Mikayla insisted the drugs didn't make her see that. God told me, she said. Tatan's story was different. He seemed confused, regretful. Mikayla kept saying Darlene was evil. That God told her. That we had to stop her before she hurt people. He paused, his voice breaking. I believed her. I thought we were doing the right thing. But belief doesn't excuse murder. Both were charged with first-degree murder. Forensic analysis confirmed what investigators knew. No forced entry. Darlene had welcomed them in. The gun belonged to Titan. Legally purchased. Toxicology showed marijuana in both their systems. But nothing that fully explained Mikayla's religious delusions. Psychologists evaluated her. Was it drug-induced psychosis? Schizophrenia? A genuine break with reality? The evaluations were inconclusive. Mikayla showed signs of delusion, but also signs of manipulation, of knowing exactly what she was doing. The question remained, was Mikayla insane? Or was she using religion as justification for murder? For 2 years, Mikayla Yusko and Titan Jin sat in Volusia County Jail. Darlene's family attended every hearing. They wanted justice for the woman who gave everything to others. She was a missionary, one family member said. She spent her life teaching children about God, and she was killed by someone who claimed to follow God's will. The irony is unbearable. In 2024, Mikayla's case finally reached sentencing. She'd taken a plea deal. First-degree murder reduced to second-degree murder. This meant she'd avoid a potential death sentence. But the judge still had significant discretion. On sentencing day, the courtroom was packed. Darlene's daughters, grandchildren, friends, people whose lives she'd touched. Mikayla sat at the defense table, showing little emotion. The prosecutor laid out the case. The brutal murder of a vulnerable elderly woman. The betrayal of trust. The twisted religious justification. Then Darlene's family spoke. One daughter stood and addressed Mikayla directly.
Mikayla, my mother never did anything to hurt you. She cared about you. What possible reason would you have had to walk into an elderly woman's room and shoot her in the head? And then I realized that you didn't even have the strength and you were too cowardly to do that yourself. You had to talk your husband into doing it for you.
Another family member spoke. You took someone who dedicated her life to helping others, teaching children, spreading faith and kindness, and you destroyed her. For what? For drugs? For delusion? Mikayla was given the chance to speak, to apologize, to explain. She declined, sat silently, staring ahead. The judge spoke. Miss Yusko, you were trusted to care for a vulnerable elderly woman. Instead, you betrayed that trust in the most horrific way possible. You planned her murder. You manipulated your husband into executing it, and you have shown no remorse. This court sentences you to 60 years in the Florida Department of Corrections. 60 years. Mikayla Yusko, now 24 years old, will be 84 before she's eligible for release. The same age Darlene was when she was murdered. She was led away in handcuffs, still motionless. Titan Jin's trial is still pending. He faces first-degree murder charges and is being held without bond. Today, Mikayla Yusko sits in a Florida state prison. She will spend the next 6 decades behind bars. Darlene Hensley was cremated. Her family held a memorial service on the beach, overlooking the ocean she loved. Her daughters remember her blue eyes that sparkled, her endless kindness, her life of service. I'll always be proud, one daughter said, to know she was my mother. But this case leaves us with the question we opened with. How did faith become the weapon? Darlene Hensley was a woman of deep Christian faith. So was Mikayla Yusko, or so she claimed. Both read the Bible. Both prayed. Both believed in God's presence in their lives. But one woman used that faith to teach children and spread love around the world. The other used it to justify murder. Was Mikayla genuinely delusional? Did drugs trigger a psychotic break that made her believe Darlene was evil? Or did she manipulate religious language to rationalize something darker? Greed, resentment, a desire for control. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Mikayla was using drugs. That's undeniable. Substances that can distort reality and amplify paranoia. But she was also lucid enough to plan, to convince her husband, to steal money over months, to know that what she was doing required secrecy. What this case reveals is something deeply unsettling. Blind faith, when mixed with unchecked authority and access, can become catastrophic. Mikayla had access to Darlene's home, her routine, her trust. She had authority as a caregiver, a position that should have made Darlene safer, not more vulnerable. And she had a belief system that she twisted to justify the unjustifiable. When questioned, she didn't argue facts. She argued divine mandate. God told me. That phrase becomes dangerous when there's no one to challenge it. No accountability. No system of checks. Darlene trusted Mikayla because they shared faith. But faith, without discernment, can be exploited. So, how do we protect the vulnerable in our communities? If you have elderly family members who use caregivers, check in regularly, not just with your loved one, but with the caregiver. Ask questions. Build a relationship. Verify credentials. Background checks are important, but also check references. Talk to previous clients. Monitor finances. Unexplained transactions, missing cash, or changes in spending habits can be warning signs. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, if the caregiver isolates your family member, discourages visits, or acts defensively, investigate. Watch for behavioral changes. If your loved one becomes withdrawn, fearful, or confused around their caregiver, Take it seriously. Practical safety measures. This case forces us to confront something harder. The line between faith and fanaticism. Mikayla Yusko believed, or claimed to believe, that God was speaking directly to her, telling her to kill. In a healthy religious community, that belief would have been challenged, questioned, met with concern and intervention. But Mikayla existed in isolation. Just her, Titan, and a distorted belief system fueled by drugs and delusion. There was no pastor to counsel her, no congregation to ground her, no system of accountability to say, wait, that's not how God works. Religious communities have a responsibility here to teach that faith requires humility, not certainty. That God's voice should be tested, not blindly followed. That love, not violence, is the measure of true belief. Darlene Hensley understood that. Her faith led her to teach children, help communities, and spread kindness for 89 years. Mikayla Yusko's faith, if we can even call it that, led her to murder an elderly woman in cold blood. The difference? One was rooted in service and humility, the other in delusion and control. Darlene Hensley spent 89 years making the world better. She deserved to spend her final years in peace, looking at the ocean, surrounded by love. Instead, she died terrified and betrayed. Her family wants her remembered not for how she died, but for how she lived. As a teacher, a missionary, a woman of faith who made everyone feel seen and valued. In her letter to that former student, she wrote, "Kindness costs nothing, but it can save a life." She lived that truth every single day. Rest in peace. Darlene Hensley, you deserve so much better.